What's up, Brew Crew? I'm in Weymouth, Massachusetts at Barrel House Z. We're gonna go talk to Russ, head owner, and do like we usually do, try a few beers. What's up, Brew Crew? Welcome to Beer Time. I am in Weymouth, Massachusetts at Barrel House Z. I'm with the owner and head brewer, Russ. The name Barrel House Z, how did that, is that, I'm assuming it has to do with, you know, the way you guys brew?
The way we started, you know, when we got started with the company, our intention was to have a pretty large offering of barrel-aged beers, and we still do it a lot. But, you know, after 3 months after we opened and people coming in and asking for IPAs and other sorts of beers, you know, we quickly pivoted and just said, okay, let's have a broader portfolio. And so we've been doing that. We still do lots of barrel-aged beers, and some of them we're going to taste here today. Awesome.
Yeah, let's get started. What's the first one that we're doing here?
So the first one we do a beer called Campfire King, and it's inspired by one of our favorite campfire treats, a s'mores porter. And so it's a s'mores porter as its base beer, and then we took it and we aged it in our favorite whiskey barrel, Bully Boy. And Bully Boy is another local craft distillery in Roxbury. Good friends, great community, and we get access to their barrels quite a bit.
Awesome.
So cheers.
Cheers.
So it's got a nice whiskey backbone to it, but it's also got all that, you know, toasted marshmallow and chocolate, and
yeah, and it's not overpowering either.
Everything's kind of subtle.
Yeah, it's subtle. I actually like the fact the whiskey kind of comes out more, because when I'm thinking like s'mores and campfire, like
you're usually drinking bourbon with it.
Yeah, you're usually having a bourbon. This actually tastes more like the s'mores that I have.
Yeah, these are big people s'mores.
Yeah, these are adult s'mores. Exactly. So. Right? That's a great balance.
Now it's very drinkable. I found that when we do our barrel-aged beers in the spirit barrels in particular, it picks up a lot of the booze that's in the wood, but also imparts a real smoothness. So you get this drinkability that's a little insane. This is over a 12% ABV beer.
This is 12?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that doesn't.
Lunch. Yeah.
Let's get it going. That's fantastic.
I got a long day ahead of me, otherwise it'd finish
that blows my mind, because I usually as soon as you surpass like 10 or 11, you get this like syrup almost that can linger. And it's almost like I'm taking a shot of schnapps.
Yeah.
You know, like that kind of viscous, and like I get it. I don't get any of that.
Yeah, we if I can say that if there's something I'm trying to impart with all the brewers that work here at Barrel House Z, is trying to make sure that we're always balanced. Often we try to do some nuanced stuff. Sometimes if it's intentional, you know, we wanted to have something that's totally in your face, but for the most part, we really try to go for drinkability and balance and subtlety.
That's awesome. So what's the backstory behind this? You're from Michigan.
No, my wife's from Michigan.
Okay, your wife's from Michigan.
Yeah.
I was talking to her a little bit before.
I'm from California. So
You're from California, okay.
Born and raised in San Jose, California. And half my mom's family were all farmers. They actually grew grapes a lot for the wineries out there. And little known fact, University of California, Davis has probably one of the most respected fermentation sciences departments in the world. And if you check out the ranks of people who are head winemakers and head brewers, and they're populated with people that came out of the Davis program, literally for the last 100 years. And so you don't hear about that too much on the East Coast. But when I was getting ready to graduate from, tell you how old I am, in the mid 80s from Davis, preparing to go to work for either Anheuser-Busch or a winery, the guys who started the Harpoon Brewery came looking for a brewer, because as they had always joked around, they were big consumers but didn't know much about how to make it. And they heard that about the Davis program when they were doing a West Coast tour of all the burgeoning at that time. There was like 5 craft breweries on the West Coast, and so they came out, talked me into moving out to the West Coast.
Was that Dan that came?
It was Dan.
Yeah.
Actually, it wasn't Dan. It was Rich Doyle.
Okay.
Rich came out, interviewed me, and moved out here in August of 1986. Literally with suitcase and pennies in my pocket. Slept on Dan and Rich's couches respectively until found a place in Brighton, Austin Brighton area. Put together a little homebrew kit. Started making a bunch of little different batches of Harpoon Ale in my apartment. And so Harpoon Ale, the first batch of Harpoon Ale was actually made in an apartment in Austin Brighton.
That's awesome.
It's a true story. Yeah, true story. So
that's an interesting journey.
Yeah, and so
I mean, did you ever like even consider before that even going to the East Coast or?
No, I had literally never been east of Reno, Nevada before I moved out to Boston.
Wow.
I was born and raised native California, and it was quite the culture shock. It took me about 3 years to learn the language when I moved here. We moved into 306 Northern Avenue at Harpoon in January, gutted it, got the brewery online by May, and then we had our first keg of beer sold to the Sevens Ale House on Charles Street in Beacon Hill by June 3rd, 1987. And it was a crazy, crazy first 6 years. That's how long I stayed there.
You know, coming from California, why barrels? Why was that your forte, or
It wasn't. When we started Harpoon, it was all about giving people something that they couldn't get. I mean, you think back to the 80s, the beer market was all Miller, all Coors, all Anheuser-Busch, and so it was fuzzy yellow stuff, okay? And people would go over to Europe, get beer with flavor in it, and I'm not knocking those styles, but it was so prevalent that nobody had any choices. Ironically enough, 2 years into the start of Harpoon Ale, the folks at Jack Daniel's approached us, and they had some barrels, and they wanted to do an experiment. They wanted to age Harpoon Ale in Jack Daniel's barrels, and we did, and the beer was amazing. But the beer market then was not what it is now.
It seems
nobody wanted barrel-aged beer.
Well, yeah, it was like you're like ahead of the curve.
I would
like
say
way ahead.
20 years ahead at that point. The beer was amazing, but I never forgot it. I think we should move on to Avalon, because that was sort of the next step in the evolution.
Okay.
And it's Avalon Stout.
Yeah.
One of the first head brewers that was here was a good friend of mine named Chris Webster. Chris was also from the West Coast, had family that he was starting. He ended up having to go back to the West Coast, but one of the beers he came up with, and I've always encouraged, is I always want our brewers to be creative and come up with their own signature beers. Right? So he came up with this stout, and then he wanted to name it, and he just had his second child, a daughter named Adeline, hence Avalon Stout.
Here she is.
Yeah, and so this is a big imperial stout, and so as a result, you're going to taste a little more roastiness in the backbone. And it's not going to be quite as sweet, although it's probably more on the sweeter spectrum than a typical, Guinness kind of Irish stout kind of stout. So more coffee, more roastiness.
Yeah,
a little more char.
That's what it is. Yeah. Like in the beginning, there's like that.
Yeah.
Almost like this. It's like a bite, but it smooths out.
It smooths out real fast.
Like real fast.
Yeah.
Kind of a bite you don't expect from stouts.
Right.
That come in the beginning. Like I've never had one that comes in the beginning like that, and then
usually it lingers.
Away.
Yeah, usually lingers with the, sort of the roasty ones. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's really good.
Yeah, it's always been one of my favorites. We're actually barrel aging a version of this as well. It's in the whiskey barrels on the production floor. So this one started off as everything we do here, we start off in a small batch. An experimental thing that we call our pilot pour program, and we'll often do that in the form of collaborations. Often I'll challenge any of the brewers that are here to come up with their favorite beer, we'll press them on it and say, it's got to be something that people are going to drink. You can't make it something so esoteric that people won't drink it, et cetera, et cetera. So we put a framework together and gave them a creative challenge. And one of the beers that came out was something that we had called originally Hamsters on Parade, and just for fun. And we decided that dolphins were, a lot more fun
than hamsters.
For some reason. Barrelhouse Z is known for barrel-aged beers, our sort of what we call generally our pastry beers, and then our darker, more traditional beers like stouts and porters. And we really didn't have even the two beers that we had in the market called Bamboozled by Hops and Bam Bam, which is the double IPA, really are more West Coast styles than New England styles. And so we challenged our brewer to come up with a New England IPA. And he came up with Dolphins on Parade. Citrus, grapefruit, lemony, it's got a lot of...
it's refreshing.
It's a very refreshing beer. It's, again, I always caution people, we tend to make things so freaking balanced that they're pretty drinkable. It's a 6 point, it's over 6%.
That's what blows my mind about, you're achieving these higher ABVs, and I'm not picking up on it at all.
They're smooth.
It's incredibly smooth.
Yeah.
Even when you get into the sixes, usually you can kind of tell, but this was 8.5.
Yeah.
And then you were saying 12 and up on the...
Yeah, on the Campfire.
It's you wouldn't notice. It's dangerous.
No, I take that as a compliment.
But it's like I say, and I hate, I don't like that syrupy, where you're this is boozy.
Yeah. No, I take it, it's a creative challenge for me. So, and I've always said, you give me a technical framework or technical problem to try and, solve, and then the creativity comes in solving that. The creativity part comes from what we hear from people here in the tap room and what folks are experiencing in the field. And sometimes all they get is, it needs to taste like this. And that's it.
Well, if you need a taste tester to come in, I'd be happy to swing over
so
here. On my way to work.
We get lots of volunteers. But one of the things I find is it's actually, I find it, I love it, because it's, in some ways it's almost, it's not me saying these are the types of beers I like and trying to
push it out
to people.
Challenge,
it's,
in a sense,
this is what people want, and we have to figure out how to deliver it.
Yeah.
That's fun.
Yeah.
That for me is both a creative and a technical challenge.
Well, I can't wait to see what you guys come up with, and
every week, man, it's a new release.
We're right down. Yeah, we're not right down the street now.
If you're nearby, then you got to start getting into the whole sign up for the newsletter, and you'll hear about our new releases every week. And we literally do a new release every week out of the pilot program. So
awesome.
we very deliberately set up the small batch system so that we can do small batches and be experimental all the time.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Great.
Awesome.
Well, cheers again.
Cheers.
And we'll catch you guys next time on Beer Time.
Thanks.